All right, in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about what we call population genetics. We're going to define evolution in terms of genetic terms. We're going to look at the sources of genetic variation among living things in population, determine the phenotypes for a given trait. So, just a reminder, species is a population of physically similar interbreeding organisms that do not interbreed with other such groups. They can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. A population is a group of individuals of the same species that mate and produce fertile offspring. Reminder, genotype is a combination of alleles, and a phenotype are the physical, physiological, or behavioral characteristics that are coded for by the genotype. Natural selection acts on an organism's characteristics, its phenotype, not on its alleles or genotype. And gene pool consists of all genes present in the population, including all alleles for each gene. So allele frequency is a way we can look at evolution. Evolution involves changes in the allele frequency in the population over time. If the population allele frequency doesn't change, it's not at that particular time evolving, at least for that trait. So the number of times an allele occurs in the gene pool as a percentage of the total occurrences in all alleles is allele frequency. We typically write it as a decimal. So let's say there's 50 alleles in the population in the first generation. 20 are black, big B alleles, and 30 are brown, little b alleles. So we want to figure out how many would be in the next generation if the population size were to double. So in this case, it would be 40 and 60. Genetic variation, where does it come from? There are three evolutionary mechanisms that generate genetic variation. Mutation, which is a heritable change in genetic information, and the only source of new alleles. Genetic recombination, which is the exchange of genetic material between different organisms, which leads to the production of offspring with a combination of traits that differ from those found in the parent. This is meiosis and fertilization. Remember, crossing over is a part of that as well, where the chromosome from mom and dad cross over, exchange genes, and now the genes from mom and dad are mixed together on the same chromosome. And finally, lateral gene transfer, passing genes from one individual to another that's not its offspring. This happens typically with bacteria through a process called conjugation. It can occur between members of the same species or different species. So evolution works on single gene traits and polygenic traits a little bit differently. A single gene trait, just a reminder, trait controlled by only one gene. In this case, snails having bands or no bands on their shell would be an example of a single gene trait. So in this population, 20% of the population has no bands, 80% has bands. And if the frequency changed for that trait, we would see that evolution had occurred. So phenotypic ratios are determined by the frequency of alleles and by whether the alleles are dominant or recessive. Polygenic traits, traits controlled by two or more genes, have what we call a bell-shaped curve for the range of phenotypes, where most individuals are in the middle, the average, and as you move away from that average phenotype, you have fewer and fewer individuals. Here's an example, human height. We've got a picture here that shows that bell-shaped curve for the individuals of this particular military academy. The photo was where they lined up by height.